Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to our roundtable or panel discussion on where Turkey is today in the world. What is the new Turkey? First of all, I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Turquoise Council of Americans and Eurasians, which is an American-based group, primarily of people of Turkish backgrounds or Turkic backgrounds, who share a concern for the image and position of Turkey in the world today, especially at a time when there's a great deal of controversy over what is happening to Turkey today. As we all know, there are many controversial aspects of this as Turkey becomes more independent in its foreign policy positions, more independent policies towards Iran, Israel, Russia, Palestine, and other countries. There is some talk now and then about whether Turkey has been lost to the West, and who lost Turkey, somewhat like the debates that were heard 50 years ago or so on who lost China. Or some suggestions that maybe there's a new axis developing in the Middle East, which would be a Turkish-Syrian axis instead of an American-Israeli-Turkish axis. So these are some of the issues that I think are really extremely contemporary, very important, and we have a superb panel here to address these issues from many different points of view. So I think you all have in your folders the list of speakers that we have here for today, and I don't want to have to stop and introduce each of them, but you will find their biographies in your pamphlet. So I think it's very important that we, at a time when there is so much controversy surrounding aspects of Turkish policies, domestic and foreign, that we try to address these from all points of view. Turkish politics, unfortunately, has become somewhat polarized in recent years, perhaps more so than in quite a long time. So any discussion of these issues has to really acknowledge the various viewpoints that exist. Otherwise, these issues will not be comprehensible to an American audience, and particularly to a congressional audience, which needs to understand, frankly, the pros and cons or various aspects of issues at heart. So we will attempt to represent as much as we can various viewpoints. Even the same speaker may offer alternative viewpoints on these developments. Let me just say one or two more words about Turkey at this point as we move into our panel discussion. There's no question in my mind that Turkey today is one of the most important countries in the world. I know many countries would like to flatter themselves that that is the case, but Turkey really has now become incredibly central to events across a very broad region. First of all, I mean, if we think about Turkey as part of the huge Muslim world, there's no question that Turkey today is by far overwhelmingly the most democratic of all Muslim nations, and much more democratic than huge numbers of other nations in the world. Certainly in the Middle East or in the Muslim world, it has the most powerful military, with the exception of Israel, of course, but I'm talking about within the Muslim world or even the region at large. It is a member of NATO, as you all know, a long-standing member. It is an aspirant to become a member of EU. It's been a long ally of the United States during the Cold War. And above all, it is it is developing a sense of regional interest that is very new. I would call this almost revolutionary, and I'll have a few more words to say about that later on in our foreign policy period. But this is a country that now thinks in 360 degrees around it in terms of its interests, be they as Turkey as a European country, as a Western country, as a Balkan country, as a Caucasian country, as a Black Sea country, as a Mediterranean country, as a Middle Eastern country, et cetera, even with interests in Africa, and certainly a Eurasian country. So this is a very broad range of power and importance that I think makes it become more important to Washington rather than less in the old days when it was simply a loyal ally, quote unquote, of the United States. So let's begin. And our first speaker will be Ömer Taşpınar, who is a fellow at the Brookings Institution and professor at the National War College. Let me also say I've asked each speaker to speak no more than 10 minutes. These are huge topics. Books have been written on each one of them. But we want to have time for discussion and debate among ourselves and with you here. So we're deliberately, I will be fairly strict in keeping, asking our speakers to limit themselves to 10, maybe 11 minutes if I'm feeling generous. And then we'll go on. So with that, let me turn first to Ömer Taşpınar, who is going to be looking essentially at domestic issues, and the first half of our panel is indeed on domestic. And I'm sorry, just one more thing. We will not be taking a break because it will just simply, we'll lose our momentum. So if anybody needs to leave for any reason, please do so, but there will be no formal break. Ömer.
Thank you, Graham, and thank you all for coming. Since Graham asked me to speak for 10 minutes, I'll try to be brief, and I'll be happy to answer questions later on in the discussion section. Let me echo what Graham just articulated, that there's a new Turkey, especially as far as foreign policy is concerned. There's a more ambitious and self-confident Turkey that wants to have a 360-degree foreign policy. And definitely this is a new development compared to the 1990s when Turkey was more focused about its own problems at home, the Kurdish problem, the war with the PKK, and the ousting of the welfare party government by the military, what came to be called the soft coup in 1997. So compared to the 1990s, this last decade, the first decade of the 21st century, has been a more ambitious, more positive decade for Turkish foreign policy. The bad news, however, is that the problems at home continue. And here, since we will talk about domestic issues in this first half hour, let me underline what is probably obvious to all Turks in this auditorium, that basically the country continues to have a major identity conflict. And in fact, there's a mismatch between the ambitions of Turkish foreign policy and the situation at home, where there is no really real consensus, the absence of a new social contract, an absence of a new constitution, which would be able to solve the identity problems of the country. And what I mean by the identity problem of the country is nothing new. Essentially, there are two major identity conflicts in Turkey, and those of you who follow Turkish news are likely to see in the headlines every day something related to these two issues. The first one is the Kurdish issue. It has been plaguing Turkey since the end of the Cold War, but its roots goes back to the birth of the Republic, when the Republic was established by the founding father Atatürk. There was this idea of basically assimilating the Kurds, transforming the Kurds into Turkish citizens. And this assimilation project of the Turkish Republic of Kurds has created major problems, but during the Cold War, there was a sense that the problem was solved, that the Kurdish issue was somehow solved, but with the end of the Cold War, starting with the 1980s, with the reemergence of the PKK as a terrorist organization, there is an